Hey guys, and welcome to my post-release analysis/review for the Liberation system in NIKKE. I want to talk about the Liberation system itself, as well as the characters that are available and why I decided to go for Guilty over the other options. I will also give you guys some tips to help you find out which character is the best for your account, as well as an overview of how I'm using Guilty in my teams. I will be going over a bunch of different things in this video, so I will be sure to put timestamps so you can just skip to the parts you are interested in. With that said, if you like what you see and you find this video useful, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, as it really helps out my channel. Also feel free to check out my links in the description below if you are interested, so you can download BlueStacks if you need a really good emulator for playing mobile games on PC. But with that being said, let's get on with the content. First up, let's talk about the Liberation system itself. The Liberation is a new system where you can do missions that give a certain amount of points depending on the mission's rarity. You get 3 missions per day, but you can complete up to 6 per day. And one thing I only knew 1 week after release is that you can actually reroll the missions until you get an SSR. So obviously this is not for everyone because you still have to use gems, but I just wanted to mention it because this is an option. I only refreshed my missions because I wanted to make a video about this character as soon as possible, but I would imagine that for most people, this is not an option. It took me about a month to get one character from the Liberation, but most people will get their character around the 60-day mark without refreshing. Overall, I would rate this a 6 out of 10. It's nice to have a system where you can get a free character and potentially get them to max limit break without having to pull on the banner. But they heavily time gated the system, which is very off-putting for most players. Now when it comes to choosing which character to go for, the main thing you are going to be looking for is either you will simply go for a character because you like them, maybe because of their design, story, voice actor, or whatever it may be. If that's the case, then feel free to do so. There's no use to pulling for a meta character if you don't see yourself having fun using them. But if you just want to know which character is the best for you, or maybe there's no specific character that you like, then definitely keep watching. Because I think there's a big misconception between the best Liberation character and the best Liberation character for you. If you have been watching my channel for a while now, you have probably seen my early analysis video covering all the characters in the Liberation system. And I'm happy to say that my analysis in that video is pretty spot on when it comes to how each of the characters performed on release. At least according to the initial testing done by the community within the first week of trying out characters. As you all know, it's impossible for me to test out all of these characters because they are time gated, and even after spending an insane amount of gems in refreshing, just to be given another mission that will ask me to spend more gems, it's only possible for me to get one character every 30 days or so. So the information I will be going over will be based on the discussions I've had with the community members who have the characters that I don't have. And if I use any other external resources, I will be sure to leave a link to those in the description below. So starting things off, from a meta perspective, Sin is by far the worst option out of all the characters on the list. She basically has a very similar kit to Winter Shopper Rupee, and that also means that Sin shares the same problems that Winter Rupee has, at least some of it. And by far the biggest problem that you will notice is that Sin, just like Winter Rupee, has a taunt effect, but she doesn't have enough self-sustain to justify having one. Her skill 1 duplicates 15% of your ally with the highest HP, which means that Sin will be gaining more HP. But this effect will only last for 5 seconds, which is not that good. And the worst part of this ability is the second effect that will taunt all of your enemies for 5 seconds. Which means that more often than not, Sin will be taking so much damage that the HP increase will not even matter. She does have more passives from her skill 1 and burst that will help her survive for a bit longer, but the fact that her skill 1 taunts all of your enemies will just make the buffs somewhat ineffective. You will most likely see this as a problem when you are pushing the campaign below recommended power level. Enemies will hit harder, so it's less likely for your characters to survive. This is the main reason why characters like Senti are meta, because why would you choose to take less damage if you can instead not take any damage at all by using a shield? So overall, Sin is out of the picture when you are looking for the best character on the list. As I said earlier in this video, if you want to go for a character because you simply like their design, then feel free to do so. But aside from that, I don't really recommend this character. Next up, we have QUENCY and GUILTY. I'll be putting these two in one section because the best character really depends on your account. Some players will have more characters than others, some players will also have more of a specific character type, and other players may need to go for a character that can fill the role that they are lacking in. At the end of the day, we can't really compare these two head to head because QUENCY is meant to be a support and GUILTY is meant to be an attacker. So it's basically like comparing Scarlet and Litter to see which one is better, which doesn't make sense because these two characters have a different purpose and use case. So what we can do is we can lay out some important details for each character to give you a better idea on which one you need more depending on your account. First up, we have QUENCY. As a support, QUENCY will mainly give your team more damage with her skill 2 and burst. her skill 2 activates every 8 seconds, and it will increase your 2 main DPS attack by 16.11% at level 10. To put this into perspective, N102's burst increases your team's attack by 25.86%, which is around every 20 seconds or so, depending on how fast your team charges their burst meter. And taking a look at QUENCY's skill 2, within the span of 20 seconds, which is the same as N102's burst cooldown, QUENCY would have given a total of 32.22% more attack for each of your main DPS, which would have lasted for a total of 10 seconds. This ability only affecting 2 of your allies with the highest attack is fine because they are the ones doing the most damage anyways. Also keep in mind that QUENCY's skill 2 is unconditional, which means that her skill 2 will activate every 8 seconds no matter what, as long as QUENCY is on the field. So in cases like when you are using Modernia, and you are forced to go through 15 whole seconds of her burst, QUENCY being able to give an attack boost in the middle of that can be very useful. Next up, we have QUENCY's burst. This will again affect 2 of your allies with the highest attack, increasing both their max HP and critical damage. This will increase their max HP by 43.87% for 5 seconds, which is okay, as well as increasing their critical damage by 29.9% for 10 seconds. The HP buff is decent and it's nice to have, but it's only really useful for the squishier characters like Scarlet so that they don't get taken out easily. And of course, we also have the critical damage buff, which actually scales pretty high compared to the other characters who also have the same effect. And lastly, her skill 1 is kind of just whatever, because it doesn't really affect her kit at all, so I would have preferred to have a different effect for his skill 1. I would say that if you are lacking a good offensive support character, then QUENCY is a good option. And as a support unit, QUENCY is generally more flexible compared to the other options in the Liberation. Her attack buff is really good and consistent, only having a 3-second downtime, and the buffs from her burst is also very useful. And next up, we have Guilty. Aside from the big and obvious reasons why I decided to go for her, one of the main reasons why I chose Guilty over the other characters is because I wanted to get a better close range DPS. My mid to long range teams are pretty much complete. They have upgraded skills, equipment, and quite a few limit breaks on some of the characters, so it only made sense for me to focus on my close range roster. I also noticed that during the later chapters in the campaign, there are more and more close range stages, so it's really a good time for me to start building out a good shotgun team. And also, if you watched my early analysis, you would know that I already knew that Guilty will have the highest damage ceiling out of all the characters in the Liberation. She might not be the most flexible because Guilty is a shotgun user, but in the right stage with the right team, she will outperform a lot of the characters we have now. What makes Guilty so good is her skill 1. She is the only character that is able to duplicate a certain percent of the attack of your ally with the highest attack. So things like equipment, bond level, limit break, core up, research level, and any other attack source for your main DPS will also increase Guilty's attack. And this makes her the burst 2 character with the highest personal damage ceiling. I would even say that in the right stages, Guilty can be better than Rupee, who was for the longest time the best offensive burst 2 unit. Her skill 1 activates after landing 6 normal attacks, and it will duplicate 8.81% of attack of your ally with the highest attack. And this effect can stack up to 5 times with a 10-second duration. So this basically has a 100% uptime, assuming that you almost always have an enemy on the field. Her skill 2 is okay in some teams, but I say some teams because it is limited to wind type units. So depending on your team comp, this can be okay, but in most cases, this will only apply to herself. And I also do think that it's not worth using most of the wind type units over the actual meta characters just for the sake of having the effect from Guilty's skill 2. Moving on to Guilty's burst, this is another really good ability which has really good scaling. And the damage from this is almost doubled if you have her skill 1 at maximum stacks. On top of that, this will also apply a defense shred for 5 seconds, which will further increase your team's overall damage to the enemy. Guilty is the strongest one on the list because she is the only one classified as an attacker. So Guilty is really meant to deal a lot of damage. So I would say that if you are all set when it comes to support units and you don't really need QUENCY in your teams, and because I don't really recommend going for Sin, Guilty can be your best bet. Just know that Guilty is not very flexible because she is a shotgun unit and will optimally be used in boss stages because of her single target burst. Moving on, I will quickly go over how I'm using Guilty to hopefully give you an idea on how to use her in your teams. Basically, I just run Guilty with Litter, Modernia, Rapunzel, and Privity or Drake. If the enemies are more spread out, I will use Privity for her burst, but when it comes to boss stages or if majority of the enemies are at close range, then I will use Drake. As for her skills, for now I have all of them at level 4, but I do plan on upgrading her skill 1 even further depending on how much I enjoy using her. For Guilty's equipment, she has a tier 8 helmet and vest with a manufacturer bonus, and 2 regular tier 9 gloves and boots. For the Harmony Cube, I have her on Resilience because I feel like that's the best one since Guilty has a 2.67 second reload time without one. But you can also use Assault Cube, especially if you're up against bosses that have those big red circles popping up or a lot of weak points. So yeah, that's about everything I have for the Liberation system. I will be doing a quick showcase of Guilty, so stick around if you want to see that. But other than that, I appreciate you watching until the end. On your way out, please do hit the like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel. With that being said, hope you enjoyed the showcase and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.